Bolivia is in a state of outrage after the plane carrying President Evo Morales was diverted to Vienna amid suspicions that US surveillance whistleblower Edward Snowden was on board. The presidential plane was flying the Bolivian entourage home after a visit to Russia. France and Portugal are reported to have refused access for the plane to cross their airspace. We categorically reject this story. We denounce the lies and the plot by the US government and its European allies to harm the image of the Bolivian government and the leadership of President Evo Morales. Austrian authorities say Snowden was not on board the aircraft. Snowden is believed to be holed up at an airport in Moscow and is wanted by the US on charges of leaking secrets he obtained while working as a CIA operative.
Welcome to the second No Peasants candidate panel. The goal in organizing these discussions with independent and third-party candidates is to help show that there are alternatives to the mostly corrupt uniparty we have had in power for so long. When things are bad, people can feel powerless, and we are more susceptible to falling for the narratives that are spoon-fed to us by the stenographers of power in the media. Think about it. Why do they repeat so often that third parties and independents can't win? It shows that power is very worried about people rising up. Recent Gallup polling from 2025, please see nopeasants.org, it shows that 45% of Americans and overall and 56% of Gen Z identify as independents. And I'm going to have a clip at the end about that specifically. 89 million Americans, or about 36% of the country's voting eligible population, didn't even vote in 2024. We had big turnout, but it was still a lot of people that stayed home. And when they are asked, why do they stay home? It's because they don't think their vote matters, that there's a little difference between the two major parties, and that the uniparty represents its donors, not voters. And so that's my goal in bringing all these third-party and independent candidates together, though I will have a duopoly party candidate next week that I've known since 2018. She is running against Cory Booker and had gotten 38% in a primary, so she's kind of grandfathered in. But it's mainly going to be third-party and independent candidates because you guys are the ones that are standing up, for all of these things that are on this candidate pledge. And I made this graphic and kind of whittled it down to shorten compared to what's on the website. But I consulted polling, and polling is problematic sometimes. It's skewed. They ask questions in a way that sort of shoehorn you into a certain answer. But I did some pretty thorough research on this, and I think, you guys can probably share this as candidates when you're out talking to people, what you hear. Obviously, the economy is number one, but the other main issues are, people are tired of war. They're concerned about freedom of speech and the surveillance state. transparency in government. We're seeing that now with the Epstein files, obviously. And then, we've got ICE, election security. That was a really tricky one. And that's something that I'm involved in. And I'd like to invite anyone that's interested to start coming to our meetings on Tuesdays at 8. But I'll get into that a little bit later. But currently, the best poll I could find that wasn't totally partisan was that 49% of adults aged 18 to 29 are very concerned about this year's election and the security and integrity of it. And then there's also our justice and legal system, environmental hazards. I thought this was very interesting. When you talk to people about environmental issues and you change it to what's going on in your backyard, it really, obviously that is more impactful on people. So, it's over 50% of people are concerned about their drinking water. And then, of course, healthcare reform. And Matt Rowe, who is running for governor, Libertarian in Oregon, was sick and couldn't make it tonight. And thank you, Christian, for stepping in, but I'm sure he'll come back. And he had a great recent debate with some other candidates in Oregon, and he brought up healthcare. And, you think like Greens and Libertarians would not agree on these things, but I think there is room for constructive discussion. So that's what I'm really encouraged about. And it's just so great to have all of you here. So with that, I'll toss it over to Phil.
Well, thanks, Kelly, and welcome to the candidates, and hello to Michael, the other co-host tonight. It's nice to meet you. Just a little introduction about me. I've been a libertarian for a long time. I've run for office 5 different times, 3 times statewide and twice for state assembly, state house. I've run as a libertarian 3 of the times, once as an independent and once with an R after my name, so don't throw me off here. It was kind of a deal that we made for access to some campaign resources, but we preached legalization of marijuana, which got through the campaign, so I think we held up really well. I've got a lot of experience trying to crack open the code of running as a third-party candidate or as an independent. Kelly accurately described the problems with the duopoly, what they do, how they manage the general public's psychology about independent and third-party candidates not being able to win. And since we haven't been winning, it's sort of become sort of true too, sadly. I mean, Thomas Massey was asked recently what sets him apart from other libertarians, and he said, well, I got elected. So I know probably your Green Party folks probably feel the same way too. But in running for office, you have to, I think, to be effective, you have to believe that you can win, even if it's there's a narrow pathway to that, in order to get out of bed every day and fight like hell, like we need to do. And that applies to any third-party candidate or independent. And I'm here to support that. And the last thing I'll say is that my campaign in 2024 for U.S. Senate in Wisconsin ran as Disrupt the Corruption on the ballot. And I did a lot of campaigning with Greens, with socialists, with former disenfranchised, disillusioned MAGA people. It was all over the place. It wasn't party specific, and it was very well received when we concentrated on the issues that we agreed upon. And when Kelly mentioned healthcare, obviously libertarians and Green Party candidates probably have different ideal situations for healthcare. However, we identify the problem as the government being captured by the insurance industry, more or less. And the fact that we can identify a common problem and realize that none of us will get anything done unless some of us, regardless of which party we come from, can get elected and kind of crack the door open, I think is our common mission here. And I'm happy to be here. So thanks.
Absolutely. Thank you, Phil. My name's Michael Harbaugh. As an independent candidate here in Dayton, Ohio in 2024, and taking a break this election cycle, but still staying very active. And we'll run again in 2028 as an independent. Phil kind of alluded to the fact that it's a broad coalition of working class people, Green Party, Libertarian, disaffected MAGA. I'd say the working class that brings people to the independent side. So that brings people to the third party sort of things, because the system is collapsing right now. Like Kelly, like in the opening segment, with the traffic, people are just going to work every single day in the grind, and then paired with the disparity. the ruins in Gaza, the ruins all over the world. And I think that's what makes people want to go to a third and a fourth different way, because our two-way street right now, we're running into each other head on, and it's awful and it's crumbling. And so I would just like to go ahead and say that, introduce myself. Good to see the Kentucky party here in the house. I've heard a lot about you, Chris. It's nice to meet you in person finally. The Kentucky party is on the board. I'll let you guys get into that. And I got a question for Chris on the Kentucky party whenever you're ready, Kelly.
Yeah, I just want to say at the opening, I didn't label it. I guess I kind of assumed maybe everybody had seen it, but that was actually Netanyahu's, like, they blocked off the road, and that was.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Even more fitting.
Mm-hmm. So let's see. Why don't we go? We'll do Justin. Philip, you want to?
Sure. Yeah. I'm Justin Philip. I'm currently running for Congress in Oregon in our 4th congressional district, which includes a couple college towns, Eugene and Corvallis, and runs half of our coastline roughly. So give you sort of an idea where I am. It's the second time we've done it. My primary, I guess, motivator was to stop the arms shipment to Israel to end the genocide. That's really what sort of inspired me to take the next step. But I've been trying to build the Green Party for a while, trying to build an alternative to the two-party system. I think you showed us a lot of, in that graphic, Kelly, a lot of issues, and I guess what we're trying to illustrate to people is all those issues are connected. They're all rooted in the same system, and that is really the system that we need to address. I think Kwame Ture put it well. He said, a lot of people are interested in issues, but revolutionaries are concerned with systems. And I think we like to consider ourselves that. We need a total revolution of values, as Martin Luther King put it. So right now, I think we just have a really skewed idea of where our priorities should be. So we need a radical readjustment, in our view.
That's right.
And we're actually working with the libertarians. I'm sorry that Matt Rao couldn't be here. Matt Rao and I work closely together here in Oregon, and we're trying to think outside the box a little bit, and how we can sort of build some partnerships. So, but I'll kick it over to the other guys.
Yeah. Let's see, Michael.
Yo, I'm Michael Dublin. I'm excited to be here. I'm running for the U.S. House of Representatives in North Carolina, District 2.
Hey, Michael, we've got a little interference, I think. I'm not sure. It was fine when you first came in. I wonder if I mute everyone else, or if everyone else could mute, or we'll see if that helps. We'll do that.
Is that better?
I think so. Go ahead.
Okay, so I was saying I'm running for the U.S. House of Representatives for Congressional District 2 here in North Carolina, which is located in Wake County. It's almost all of Raleigh, capital city, but not Raleigh. So, which is my home. That's where I'm from, and I see my position as a teacher, because I'm a middle school teacher. Been doing that almost 25 years. And so of a third party, you won't hear me using that term too often, because the connotation of third party to me is like being a third wheel. And so that automatically sits on the outside. So I prefer independent parties from the duopoly. And so we have to believe that of course, the figures will always say, the studies will say we don't have a chance. My budget, my campaign budget is minuscule compared to the incumbent who has at minimum $5 million for war chest. So it is a struggle, but as an educator, my job is to reach out to people and educate them about the system, because a lot of people won't go vote because they don't feel like there's hope and they don't see it all. So we have to be honest and explain to them the system, the way it's set up against parties and unaffiliated candidates. It's stacked against us, you know. So, like in North Carolina, a lot of you already know that in order to get on the ballot in 2022, we had to fight a huge battle for the Democrats, getting over 20,000 signatures. And they fought us tooth and nail. This time around, we're still on the ballot. They made us a new party because Jill Stein did not get in North Carolina, but because he was on 35 states or more, he met the other criteria, which meant they put us back on the ballot. New party. Some of that political weebly wobbly stuff. Yet we had our convention Saturday in North Carolina, and we do have a slate of candidates that we will present, and we're excited about the movement because we have more candidates than we had last cycle, and we plan on having even more in 2028. I like to say, you know, I'm here as a member of the Green Party. We're pumping up the jam. We're pumping up the Green Party jam. We are moving forward, and we're making noise, and I do believe that we can win. Thank you.
That's like a 40-year-old musical reference, though, isn't it, Michael?
It is.
I love it.
Music.
Is that Salt and Pepper? That's
so yeah, pump up the jam, pump up the noise. Bum rush the show, public enemy. You know that rap.
There you go. There you go.
Now we cook.
1989, another summer. Yes, sir.
Well, I'm glad you brought up the 2022. We'll get into that in a bit. But okay, Christopher.
Yep. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
All right. Christopher Campbell with the Kentucky Party. For those of you who don't know what the Kentucky Party is, it's a newer party we started right here in Kentucky that's focused on anti-corruption, anti-war, and pro-peace or pro-Kentucky policies. That sounds like a very general thing. Getting that from a lot of people is like, it's really general, can mean anything. But when you look at the major two parties, they have no problem working in corruption and colluding with each other to get certain things done. We see that obviously from Trump and Speaker Johnson and people like that on the Republican side. But on the Democratic side, you have people like Chuck Schumer who speak for every Democrat apparently. And his policies and the fact that he's associated with a lot of lobbyist groups and gets a lot of money from a lot of pro-Israel people, some not so good folks out there. Sorry, I have a cat jumping on my light right now, and it's causing a bit of a distraction. Sorry about that. A crazy cat guy, so there's that too going for me. But yeah, disorganized household of cats right now. But yeah, just trying to run with a group that's not a major party because I like the idea of that. I like hearing that you guys are getting a lot of help from like libertarians or Greens and stuff. In Kentucky, it's not quite like that. I will be going to the Libertarian State Convention here, so we'll see how that goes. But I've attended a few county ones, and they have no interest in like even being involved in politics, it seems like, which is very odd because in my dealings with libertarians previously, they never shut up about politics, especially in the kind of world we are now where you see a lot of constitutional rights being violated or like private property rights being violated. It's usually where libertarians are like front and center talking about that stuff because they're the pro-liberty party, as they say. As far as the Green Party goes in Kentucky, it's pretty much dead. We did get Jill Stein to run under the Kentucky Party banner in 2024, so she does a favor there. But yeah, just trying to see what we can do. We'll see how it goes. I am the only independent candidate for a federal office in this state. I'm an unknown candidate running for a barely known party, so we'll see how that goes. I know Mr. Dublin talked about funding, so I'm running against Representative Andy Barr, who's already raised several million, and then Daniel Cameron, who's raised several million, and Nate Morris, who got 10 million from Elon Musk, and then Amy McGrath and Charles Booker on the Democratic side, who are both raising millions. I'm still at zero, so we'll see how it goes.
Important first steps.
I always wonder
Right.
about the money,
Yeah, and-
though. Is it really the money, or is it just people's perception of that makes you viable? Because at some point, I think all the spending on ads and everything, people tune it out. What do you think?
Well, yeah, I think some of the ad stuff, but it would be nice to have like 5 or 10 grand just to put my face up on a billboard, like in a busy intersection in a big city. I think that helps, or be able to hire canvassers instead of like begging people to volunteer.
And don't be afraid to ask for money either. I've known many candidates who decided early on, like, I'm not going to ask for money. I'll just run on whatever. And that's a signal of non-viability. Just ask, and if you receive some donations and you spend them, that's better than just giving up, because it sounds like you're not really convicted.
I'll push back. I'll push back though. Why is that automatically makes you non-viable?
I'm not saying it does. I'm saying that's perception, right? It makes you
Sure,
sound
but aren't we feeding into that perception when we play along with that little game? I'm going to offer a different perspective, because the incumbent in my district spent $2.2 million last time. And she's a Democrat, and the Republicans spent, I don't know, close to that, not quite as much. So let's just be honest, we're never going to compete on that level. So why even try? We need to reframe the entire conversation, in my opinion. We're talking about building alliances with the Greens, Independents, and Libertarians. That is solidarity. Solidarity is what we have to sell the public on. Even the media plays into this whole thing of financial viability, right? They only cover you if you've raised X amount of money. And so we need to highlight that too. The media is a big part of the problem, that they only pay attention to candidates that have raised money. When you've met every other qualification, that's just inherently undemocratic.
I know, it sucks.
And the media plays into that, but we need to highlight that more, because this is the system we're trying to break. We're trying to break this whole system that money controls everything. So we're not going to win. I could borrow, this needs to be guerrilla tactics. We're not going to win. We're not going to win these campaigns on the battlefield that they have created. We have to change the game completely.
Moneyball.
I mean, that's what we're here for.
Well, I would say
I'll stop there. But that's my 2 cents.
But the problem is that and one of the things I would caution against anybody running for office, early on from any party, is you have to address people where they are. You can't make people believe things that they don't already believe. You can't make them care about things they don't already care about. I mean, that is a tried and true sort of human psychology thing. With libertarians, it's been the Fed, right? Most people don't know how the Fed works and don't care. So it's a huge issue for us. The Fed's stealing our money, managing the economy. But you can't make people believe in that. You can't make them interested in contrails or chemtrails, or there's a million things, right? So you point out a really good tension there, Justin, and that is, we don't want this game. The game is rigged, yet it's the game. And so attempting to work around it is very, very difficult. And we need media of some sort to convince people that they should care about our candidacies.
Well, that's why shows like this are so important, because obviously this is an alternative to the typical, right, corporate controlled mainstream media. And there needs to be more of this. This serves a very vital role. But again, we're not here because we we're not here because we pander to people. We're here because we're leaders. Right?
Well,
we're here because we have a vision that is different than what is the norm.
Well, that's why I love these discussions, because you guys, it kind of sounds opposing, but I think you can do both. And I tend to be the kind of person that I don't want to play in their sandbox. I'm kind of a lone wolf kind of person too, but I hear so I sort of lean towards Justin, but I hear what you're saying, Phil, because you can't change somebody's mind if they're not even anywhere near in that direction. And I will say that What?
To
Go ahead.
piggyback off of Phil as well. I mean, I think Justin makes really good points, but to piggyback off of Phil, you do need to have a little bit of money so people know who you are. Like if they don't know who you are, they won't vote for you, and some of that is from advertisement. And if you're like you don't have to be millions, but you need to be like probably closer to 100,000 than you are zero. Like if you hover around zero, or like, you don't have to file with the FEC unless you make over 5,000. If you're 5,000 or under, you're probably going to have so little visibility unless you are already like have a social media following. You see some people have like a big social media following, they jump into politics and they already have that following built. But if you don't have a following beforehand, you're just like going, willy-nilly into politics, you don't have that money, you're going to have no visibility and you're just going to get buried in the noise.
Yeah, I have some perspective on this too. Is only 8,800 people visited my website in 2024. The end of 2023, I had about 10 to 15,000, I think, raised. First time candidate, and also running my own campaign. I was a little gun shy about asking for donations, so didn't raise a lot of money, didn't ask for a lot of money, and I ran. And, I started my own social media account. Nothing crazy. It just got some traction. I posted a decent amount, did some stuff that was kind of catchy, but at the end of the day, I got 11,000 votes. I got 3.1% of the vote. And only 8,800 people went to my website. So I think definitely not the millions of dollars, but like 10, 20, 50,000. Because literally what I discovered is that no one's paying attention. No one cares. No one cares. No one cares. No one cares because I think I was the best candidate. Obviously, I did the most grassroots campaign, but 80, 90% of the people, in my opinion, didn't care enough to really care or challenge or just – so anyway, so about meeting people where they're at. Yeah, so that's that's my own perspective.
Yeah.
One of the fallacies – I'm sorry, go ahead, Justin.
Oh, I was just gonna say, no, I agree with you guys. Like we do need a little bit of pocket change to like build some name recognition out there. We also got to do like the hard work of going and like meeting with people face to face too, and building relationships with individuals and with organizations, and we need to utilize the social media. I mean, although my social media meta shut me down in October of 2024, a month before the election, they suspended my accounts on Instagram and Facebook. Super frustrating as you can imagine. We already have a hard enough time. We don't have the money for ads on TV and whatnot. So one of my few ways of reaching the public was taken from me. Very frustrating. So they pull out all kinds of stops to try to circumvent the threat. My performance is probably similar to yours, Michael. I think I got like 2.7% and got like over 10,000 votes. So it was like in there, but it's a slow grind. That was like the first time running, and I didn't even start really campaigning until I got the nomination in May. But so, I'm trying to build on what we did before. And Michael is really good. I think I want to give a shout out to Michael. Michael is like good about being supportive of all these independent candidates. Like I know, I appreciate that he shares and likes my content, and we need to be each other's biggest cheerleaders because we're all we've got. All we've got is each other right now,
So other Michael, Dublin. Yeah. Do you do, all of you do a lot of stuff on the ground. I feel like maybe that is more effective. Obviously we need both, but really you just got to get out and talk to the people that are really in your district, right?
Yeah. I appreciate, like Kelly, who allowed us to come on and to have a voice. And I will ask money, somebody's listening, go to DublinSupreme.com and volunteer and donate. Obviously we will not.
Oh, Michael, your audio is going out. I'm so sorry. I'm wondering, can you do something? It'll take just a minute, but sometimes it fixes it just to reboot. Do you want to go out and come right back in? Sometimes that just resets. Because it seemed fine when you first came in.
Maybe you're just in a dead zone. Also, it's possible.
So it's the thing.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know if that will help, but I just hate to not be able to hear you.
Again.
It sounded okay when you first came in and we checked. Are you on Wi-Fi?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know. I mean, if you want to leave and come back in, I'll pull you right back up. That might just reset it. We can try that.
Okay.
Okay. So do that. I'll look for you in the backstage.
In the meantime, I have a question for Justin, Christopher, and Michael. I don't know what your original party affiliation was, Michael, but in this effort for all of us to work together in 2024, I was working with some folks in the Green Party in Wisconsin, and on peace rallies. We were on the state capitol square. We were in Milwaukee, and there were libertarians who were turned off by the fact that I was rallying with Green Party folks and socialists and peace activists. There's more of a reaction from the state Green Party with the people that were participating. And two of the people that were organizing rallies with me were basically removed from their offices for the state party from the Green Party because of they were demonstrating with a libertarian that somehow polluted their message.
That's awful.
I'm just wondering if you've run into any of that. I mean, I'm all for working together and on the big issues. And if any of us get elected, let's then argue about how to solve the problems once any of us get elected. But I'm just wondering if you've experienced any of that.
I can go. I mean, a little bit. I mean, not quite to that extent. I mean, Oregon is a little bit, as you can imagine, every region is probably a little bit different politically. And also it's like a little bit dependent on the individuals in those organizations, right? So, we get asked about PSL. We organize with PSL here too. I've heard that experiences are maybe not so good in other parts of the country. We've had just a fine relationship with PSL people, which is fine. I don't personally like to collaborate with major party folks. I mean, it's hard to campaign against them and then give them any sort of, credibility or prop them up in any way. But, like Matt Rao, who I hope you have a chance to talk to,
Yeah, me too.
We've spoken, and he's seeking the Green Party co-nomination for governor in Oregon. And when I first brought that to the Green people, because I was like the first one to talk to him, I'm the secretary out here also of the Pacific Green Party. So he reached out to me to have a conversation, told me he voted for me in 2024 and Jill and stuff. So like in Oregon, our libertarians, I don't know if they're the same everywhere, but they tend to be a little more like social libertarians. I think Matt supports like a Medicare for all system. So that might be a little bit different than what most libertarians support. But when I first brought this up to the Green Party, yes, the immediate pushback, I don't know, it's a Green Party guy, or sorry, it's a libertarian. Those are different politics. There's immediate pushback. And then he joined our winter convention last month and won a lot of people over. I think they told, like I said, just keep an open mind, just hear them out. And, but yeah, there's definitely some pushback, and I think there's probably just some, I don't know, what do you think the triggering issue was? What do you think, what was the issue? Why did the Green Party find it so, objectionable to collaborate with libertarians in Wisconsin?
I think there's a general misunderstanding that gets promoted by the two big parties and small parties as well about what we believe in. And so it was very easy for people who, and I'm not trying to point my finger at the Green Party by any means, because the libertarians are at least as guilty of it. The people that are involved because they want to be a big fish in a small pond and have the gatekeep their own influence within their own party rather than share that with other people and other movements and other parties. And so they find reasons, right? So 2024 was my 5th time running for office. So if they look back and said, well, he says taxation is theft, or he stands for what many other things that maybe Green parties would find objectionable, it was very easy to point that out. And I was on the record for those things, despite the fact that I'm very passionately for peace as well. And I've been, demonstrating on behalf of peace for 15 years. So it's just, I think it's a question of people's psychology, and do they really want the best for everybody? And are they willing to set aside their own investments in their own groups and their own identity to work towards that and to sort of suborn their own egos to the movement, as opposed to I am a person in this movement, in this ideology, in this party, and I'm going to gatekeep it. And it's just more of a psychological thing than it is a rational thing. But certainly libertarians are guilty of that. I'm sure pretty much everyone else is too.
Okay, may I interject? Can you hear me
Yes,
now?
of course. We can hear you. Yeah, I don't see you, but we can hear you.
Well, I think it's best for me not, because I had my phone sitting in a certain way, and apparently that wasn't good.
Oh, okay. No, go ahead. Better, we can hear you.
Yeah, because I don't want y'all. I got to hold the phone up to my face. I don't want y'all looking at my nose hairs. So that wouldn't be cute. I did an anti-war podcast with a libertarian last cycle, and so I mean, obviously we agree on the anti-war stuff, and I didn't hear the whole conversation, but I do know that in every party that I've been involved in, there are people who just frown upon working with others, and I think that's something that we in the Green have been fighting in certain states. I know in our state we have, and there's been a lot of change, and there's actually, I think at this point, more people willing to work with others on things that we have in common interest in, such as ranked choice voting and anti-war stuff. So my hope is that that's changing, and that people will be able to keep their eye on the big prize, which is giving people a different option on whom they can vote for, because people are very, very frustrated. They've lost hope, and that we can work together on things that we agree on, and we know there always will be what was referred to as gatekeepers, and but I don't believe that the NC Green Party, I can't speak for everyone, is as unwilling to work with others as maybe so in the past.
Well, that's really my goal in doing this, is I get to kind of avoid all of that stuff in the parties. And I mean, I kind of feel like for the Greens that maybe they've had to really get tough and dig in their heels in pushing back against the Democrats. And maybe that's the same way for libertarians. So they kind of get their guard up. But there is some intolerance there. And I think, but as the Greens become more interested, like when we did candidates for Assange, it was all about First Amendment, right? And libertarians were there immediately, and most of the Greens were too, but it's just not a topic that they don't typically zero in on civil liberties, right? But I think they're focusing on that more now too, with what's happening with ICE and everything. So I think there's even more of a crossover there, and I think the best thing to do is just try to work with people, because in different parties, camps, they all amongst the independents, because we have to realize how big this country is and how different, Kentucky is from Oregon and Wisconsin and North Carolina, and that it's kind of just really not constructive to sit there and be like, if somebody has to agree with me on every single thing, that you can do this without compromising any of what you believe in. But just like if it's something that's just a deal breaker, then obviously no. But if you find you agree on 8 out of 10 things, then imagine this, you guys in Congress versus what we have now. Like how much more productive that would be, right? That's my idea.
Well, I would argue that it's very easy for the duopoly parties to be successful because they don't have ideological commitments, it seems, right? So the Green Party has them, the Libertarians have them, Socialists have them, Constitutional Party has them, which means that that's a guiding force with what we believe in and why we're there and what we want to support. Whereas Democrats and Republicans can just believe whatever and just move around and be agile and can pretend like they didn't believe in things that they said they believed in 10 years ago. And that just makes them a little more horrible. It's the first word that comes to mind.
Malleable.
Yes, less burdened by their own ideology. I mean, they have none. So that's kind of what we're up against too. We have to set ours aside to work together, or to maybe a little bit. They don't have to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like I think with Christopher, someone said like, they have no problem colluding with each other,
Yes,
against
I think it was.
the working class. So it's time that there's a little like working class solidarity, and I'm glad to see it. But yeah, I think what Phil was saying, like, ego is always a big part of it, right? You gotta be willing to put the ego aside because it's gonna require mass movement. So like the Greens can't really do it by ourselves, right? The Libertarians, PSL, DSA, like there needs to be, some working class unity there.
Yeah, that's my biggest to jump on. That's my biggest thing is these groups that don't want to work with each other. I had when I led the protest against the NATO assembly coming to Dayton, Ohio this year. PSL flat out told me like they don't want to potentially be at the same rally because I got them the space, like the park. They don't want to be at the same rally where maybe a Republican's at that's against NATO. They don't want to stand side by side. And to me, any movement that is like that, you're just my way or the highway, and I don't play that game. I just think it's we're shooting ourselves in the foot with the gatekeepers. I kind of picture like Lord of the Rings and like Gandalf, like you shall not pass. That is how these gatekeepers and these people act, and it's so frustrating. But they want to protect their own little space. But yeah, I believe in independent, working class, broad movements of people that disagree. I felt during COVID was a lost opportunity for the Democrats to build a working class coalition with people that didn't want to take the vaccine. I'm just saying, my body, my choice. You could have found common ground there. Also, too, you see the issues with free speech. They're persecuting one side for a while. Now they're persecuting another side for a while. So we have to look for these opportunities where these issues overlap. Because you don't have to like change your mind, but like working together with people lessens the sharpness of any point and allows your brain to open up, makes you not hate another person so much, and you would come up with what you're you have a lot more in common. So that's my 2 cents. Not a fan of the gatekeepers.
Yeah.
Well, if you're going to make a movie reference, Michael, remember the scene in Monty Python and the Holy Grail where they're like, "Are you guys in the Judean People's Front?" No, we're not in that. We're in the People's Front of Judea. We hate the Judean People's Front. Right.
Yeah.
That's what we suffer from in our parties, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of these independent wannabe groups acting as gatekeepers, they don't realize that they become just like the two major parties. The two major parties participate in active corruption. The gatekeepers, standing on their ethics and their values, end up doing nothing, and doing nothing is just as bad, if not worse, as the corruptors. And I see that a lot in Kentucky with the Libertarian and Greens here. They end up doing nothing because they refuse to work together. I actually worked in like signature gathering groups with like 3 different independent groups. RFK Jr. one is a little less weird. Jill Stein and a little bit for Chase Oliver too. And people within those groups even ask them, why don't you guys all just form one group? Because they all got about, 1 million or just under 1 million votes and we tried to see if any of those people worked together, and they just wouldn't because they didn't like each other personally. So that's something that becomes just as bad as the two major parties. But the big thing I've seen here is that part of the Kentucky party is that we'll work with any candidate that will work with us as long as they can, show that they push policies that are anti-corruption, anti-war, particularly denuclearization. We've actually worked to get on a blind Muslim on the ballot in Kentucky for a mayoral race. So we swung that, myself and Jeff Sebesta. If you don't know him, you probably should. He's probably the hardest working canvasser and petitioner in this country. He's currently in Idaho doing stuff. But we got them, and that guy was a Democrat. We got him on the ballot. We worked with the Libertarians because we had a special election here in Kentucky for a state Senate seat, I believe it was in Louisville. And we worked to get a Libertarian on the ballot. We collected signatures for them. So far, I still haven't heard anything back from if the Libertarians will help me. I hope so. But yeah, it's kind of interesting. You guys have been making movie quotes. I grew up on professional wrestling, like WWE, ECW, that stuff. And that's what I see politics is. There's this big show. There's characters as a public-facing figure, and then behind closed doors, they all have a different persona. And they all just kind of work together to keep their public-facing characters almost like it's behind a curtain.
Well, we always see
That's why I
that
was
anytime
thinking.
there's a funeral, right? And they're all hanging out and best buddies or a ball game or whatever, right?
Yeah, they all use the
It's
same
really pro
cafeteria,
wrestling.
fitness center. They go to the same restaurants.
Yeah, it's a show. I'm really curious, actually, Christopher, if I could ask you, because you're in Kentucky, which is probably the red. I mean, North Carolina is very purple now. You're probably in the reddest state here. Although I guess Oregon East is very red. But what are you hearing on just on the ground? I'm
Ohio might
curious.
have something to say about that.
Oh, okay. Well, but do you find, I mean, I pay attention to these things. It seems like there is obviously a very big split on the right for a couple of big reasons. The Charlie Kirk assassination, the Israel thing, and now ICE. Like, it does seem to have really split the people on the right, and they're either like very disappointed in Trump and regretting their vote, or they're more so for him. Are you hearing that, like, in where you live?
Yeah, like a polarization, like there are groups of people who are just becoming more and more entrenched with the MAGA ideology or just trying to get away with it, away from it completely.
Right.
I've been to a few ICE out rallies and stuff, and you usually get accosted by a lot of people who are pro-ICE that come out in support of them. For Trump himself, it's kind of hard to know because, you know, like with Mitch McConnell messing up the hemp industry again in Kentucky, a lot of people in Kentucky just kind of hang their hats on bourbon and the horse industry and the UK Wildcats, something like that, and coal. And they kind of overlook a lot of other aspects of our economy that when you look at Kentucky, so if you've ever been to Kentucky, there's a northern Kentucky, there's a southern Kentucky, there's a western Kentucky, and there's an eastern Kentucky. And each of those Kentuckys is quite different from the others. And based on what monopolized industry has kind of got their roots sunk in that area, that's what a lot of people hang their hats on, and they don't want to, like, you know, move away from that. So getting people to understand that we need more economic opportunities widespread in the state, and getting those different sections of Kentucky to actually work together and see they have a lot more in common as Kentuckians than they do separate is very difficult, because the people who are really Republican, like MAGA Republican, they're getting angrier and angrier, and the ones who want to get distance from it just are getting to the point where they don't want to be involved in politics at all. Before I started running for this campaign, I briefly worked with Americans for Prosperity, which is, they say, a nonpartisan canvassing group, but they're conservative leaning. And I got to talk to a lot of conservative voters, and it's surprising how many like pro women's rights, anti federal government Republicans there are out there. But at the same time, they just don't participate in politics anymore. Like, I can't think of how many 60, 70-year-old white men that showed me that they were not registered to vote. Like, I didn't think that was a thing, you know, in the United States or in Kentucky specifically, but they said they're just done with politics, that they just don't want to be a part of it anymore because what they believe, their families don't, or those associated with them don't anymore, and they don't trust either party, so they're just done with it. And that was surprising because, you know, those are usually the ones who are like reliably going to the ballots, voting on everything, and they're like just done. So you either got the ones that are becoming more entrenched in their beliefs, or they're just leaving the system altogether.
Wow.
I think it's natural for people to want to invest their time and effort into things that have a likelihood of success. So if they can bury their conscience enough and stay with Democrats or Republicans, whatever the case may be, they do. And when they're faced with this party, this major party has left me, now what do I do? And they look at libertarians and Greens and independents and don't see really any history of success in terms of winning offices. That's when they bail out. And I think that's, from a candidate's perspective, I'm sure you all agree, it's infuriating because they could back us. We're for them. We're running for them. But at the same time, they see it like, is it worth their while? Is it easier to just bury your head in the sand and pretend that, you know, all you care about is your own well-being and how you're, you know, how much taxes you're paying and how you can live with your own conscience. The human psychology is a huge player in what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
Well, isn't that what the duopoly wants? They want people to feel like there's no hope not to participate, and that's
Yes.
exactly what they want. So that's why for me, it's trying to, when I do talk to people, is to somehow instill hope, because that has to be the first thing for those that's like giving up. And for me, there was a period in my life, especially it's during the Obama years, when I just gave up in politics, and that's when I left the Democratic Party for good. And I was done. I was done. I was just gonna become a troglodyte and live in a cave and let everything burn down. And so just relating to people and that hopelessness and saying, yes, I understand, but that's what those that's in power want you to feel, and then try to get them to understand that we do have the power for change. Is it very difficult and sometimes frustrating, very much so. Even talking to members of my own family, some of them are like, well, what is the point?
Mhm.
And so I think that for me, just to stay on the grind and get out there, and it's going to be a long journey. It's going to be a marathon, and so I'm digging in for the marathon. I'm going to put in the 26.2 miles and look at it one step at a time.
Well, that's why, I mean, I loved
Yep.
seeing when I did candidates for Assange, we had 70 candidates, or it was over 70 across the country. And so, yes, you all are small, get small numbers. But when you see that grid of all those people across the country that are in agreement on so many things, I'm hoping that will help some people like see that as more possible. And then having these discussions.
Well, I would like to say what Michael Dublin was talking about with your own family and stuff. I've had conversations with my own family who are like very strong Trump supporters, and with like the recent shootings, they actually got more entrenched with how much they support Trump. And they tell me this stuff's like, what does it matter? Or why do politics matter? And I try to explain to them, like, part of the reason you feel hopeless is because the people in power are making rules and regulations that hurt your lives. Like the people in power are literally trying to make sure you feel hopeless or helpless, or at least you think that the only hope is them. The ones in power need to stay in power and they'll take care of you. But yeah, a lot of people in power make rules and I feel like people kind of miss that point of politics, is that people in office do make rules and regulations that govern our lives every day and kind of put the parameters on what we're allowed to do as U.S. citizens. And for people who aren't citizens, the parameters are much tighter and much more aggressive. But I think people overlook that fact that legislators make laws and laws govern your life. So if you feel hopeless in your life, some of that has to be the fault of lawmakers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Well, I would argue too that the federal government, or the duopoly actually, does a very good job of not pushing things too hard. So we're generally, Americans eat and are entertained, right? Bread and circuses, right? We have internet, we have cell phones, we've got food one way or another, even if it's not healthy. And until America, and I hope it never happens, God forbid, but until people are actually hungry or the internet goes out or something catastrophic happens, the job or the effort of trying to make them care to the point where they'll inconvenience themselves and spend time out of their week or money out of their pocket to help us, I'm still in it. I'm not saying it's hopeless. I believe in it and I work for it every day, but what we're up against is complacency and the fact that people are still, well fed and entertained by, even if it's by politics, they're entertained.
George Carlin had a great quote about that. Probably not appropriate here, but it had to do with cell phone and
Oh, just say it, Kelly. Come on. Just say it. We're all adults.
Something about everyone's got a cell phone that'll rub your balls and make pancakes for you.
Yes, exactly.
But no, I think that there is something different now, and that's why you see the higher numbers of Gen Z moving away from the party, because they're not comfortable. They don't want to live with their parents forever, and they're facing they can't, afford to rent anywhere. And so I think, and you see, they've been really paying attention about Gaza, and they're out at the protests. And so we'll see. But yeah, I think the empire got a little too greedy and people are less comfortable. So what are they going to do? You know, I remember when Hillary Clinton said the thing about the kids in their basement. Well, I mean, okay, they've got lots of free time to go out and fight the system then. So yeah. But I wanted to ask.
Internet in that basement.
Yeah, right. I wanted to ask Christopher a little bit about the National Guard, but I think we'll probably end up over too far. It had to do with kind of what you said about your family, and I guess I've just been kind of shocked that. Well, maybe I'll play it here. It's a minute and 12 seconds. It's a little piece from Kent State. And so I've been having worked a bit on that story and learned a lot about it, I was so shocked back then. You'll hear it in this clip, but I'm shocked to see that so many people are having the same reaction now, like you described as with your parents. So hopefully this clip should play okay. Here we go.
This is the Guard's commanding general, Robert Canterbury. He has only recently arrived and is still wearing his business suit.
You have your weapons in the ready position.
The troops are told to load live ammunition. This is out of the ordinary. Most of the time, soldiers wear their ammunition clips on their uniform, which constitutes a clear show of force.
Guard turned in its riot gas and its live ammunition this morning and prepared to pull out of the battlefield at Kent, Ohio. The men were cold and tired and still jittery from the rioting.
We got a job to do, you know. We can stand on any people, throw rocks and bricks at us. A kid get his kneecap shattered with a wrench. Nobody cares about us. All they care about them 4 pigs up there that got killed.
How do you feel about what happened to those people?
How do I feel? I feel it's about time one of them got it like that.
His sentiments were shared by many residents of Ohio who overwhelmingly backed the actions of the National Guard.
I don't think they overwhelmingly did, but there were a lot that did. And I think that shocked me to learn that about this. This is in the Nixon, 1970, before I was born. But that to learn that people are having that same reaction now to like Renee Good and Michael Preddy is kind of shocking. Yeah, but didn't you find that, like they said, pulling out of the battlefield at Kent, Ohio? It was a college campus, and you see all that gear, and we talked about this in the first panel with Anthony Aguilar, and he was a former Green Beret, and he and Jose Vega were talking about the Imperial Boomerang, as it's called. It's like, we've spent all this money and training on the military, and now it's like, I guess it has nowhere else to go, so we're going to turn it back on our own people. And that was, we opened last panel with a clip from Josie Gilbeau, who was there in Minneapolis, and she was in the military, and she talked about seeing the, I guess, guardsmen and ICE agents, flanking, like using military tactics to surround people. And then they have all the gear, they've got the glasses and, all the surveillance tools. And it's just crazy to me that we're back at that moment from May 4th, 1970. It's just amazing. So if that's
in a lot of ways, Donald Trump's like a dumber version of Richard Nixon. Richard Nixon even said on a tape that referencing Kent, but talking about a different riot. He's like, sometimes you got to kill a few of them, right? Look what we did at Kent State. We killed a few of them and the protesters stopped. Because that's just Kent. You had the hard hat riots was like just a few days after that. Yep. You had the May Day riots that weren't too long. There were several protests in a very short year and a half span. And everyone that Nixon had a comment on was just sometimes you got to kill a few of them. There shouldn't have been guardsmen there. It's a college campus. And anywhere where the military is, the rule of engagement is supposed to be you don't fire unless fired upon. None of those kids had weapons. They weren't firing bullets at them. And today, though, it's kind of worse because it's greatly unconstitutional because a lot of the guardsmen going around these states are from Texas or Florida or Republican states going into blue states. It's right in the Constitution that states are not supposed to send military personnel from one state against another state without approval from that state. And the federal government's not supposed to send in federal forces without consulting that governor. So that's part of the reason why I don't understand why libertarians, some Republicans, but some Republicans will just kiss the president's ass just because he's Republican. But libertarians shouldn't. Libertarians are supposed to be straight by the book, the life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, and you don't infringe on that. And they're just really not. They've become more of the bootlicking type in a lot of cases. Not all of them, but a lot of them have just kind of settled and said, we're just going to deal with this. But to push back on Democrats, and again, this is with a Republican president doing this much, it's a lot of opportunities for Democrats to not suck. So you have Democratic presidents like Gavin Newsom or here Andy Beshear or was it Pritzker in Illinois, or Tim Walz in Minnesota, who say that they believe ICE or these other guard troops are like insurrection, like an invading force. Well, then they as governors should activate their National Guard units. Whether or not we should have a state versus federal war in the country is not what I'm saying. Their rhetoric is they believe they're being invaded. If they truly believe that and they have a conviction there, then they should activate their federal forces and their state police forces to confront that.
Here.
But they don't.
Yeah,
but they don't because then.
Christopher.
Yeah.
Let's connect after this because I can help you smack your Kentucky libertarians upside the head a little bit and get them on track.
I thought it was just the New Hampshire libertarians that were like.
However, your Kentucky libertarians are reacting, it's not representative of the rest of the movement and the party. I can guarantee you that.
Michael?
No, and that's something that everyone who's Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, Green Party, anything should agree on, that this is obviously federal overreach. And it's not just simply a federal rights, states' rights. It's just a federal government telling you we're going to send in FBI, ATF, ICE, National Guard, whatever we have to put you in line. And that's not their job. They're not supposed to be doing that. Regardless of how you feel about immigration, I mean, we have immigration. Local municipalities and state policing forces already enforce immigration policies. ICE isn't supposed to be going everywhere doing everything with other federal agents. That's not their job.
Yeah, if I could jump in.
Go ahead, Justin. I
knew ICE would be a topic, so this is just a point I want to make. And I studied a little bit of psychology, not enough to just enough to be dangerous, but I was a little bit of a psychology student in college, and a lot of what we see is confirmation bias. Like, how can people watch these things that are you should see the objective truth of what happened in these situations, right? With Alex Preddy, et cetera. But they see a completely different reality. They've constructed a completely different reality for some reason.
Yeah.
But we're just talking past each other on this whole issue of ICE because some of those on the conservative side will say, well, what the liberals or whoever, which I don't consider myself a liberal, I consider myself to the left of that, but they use those blanket terms. The liberals they think we should just have violent criminals on the streets. Well, if ICE was actually just doing that, if they were actually just going after violent criminals, probably would be less objections. But that's not what's happening. I mean, in Minneapolis, they're going door to door. Like, we're considering in the Green Party drafting something. We did this with IDF, labeling ICE a terrorist organization, just like we labeled the IDF a terrorist organization. They're literally going in there and terrorizing these communities, going door to door, harassing people. You've seen the videos. Like, I heard your accent. Like, this is not you going after someone that's a known criminal. And it's all happening because the incentive system is all screwed up. The incentive system is such that they get rewarded for deporting more people. So they're just going after whoever. And they've been given carte blanche to do whatever they want by this administration.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it's like a secret, literally a secret police force going in, violating the Constitution. Yes, thank you, Phil, but where are all the rest of the libertarians right now standing up? Some of them are, but standing up to this.
To be fair, I see my population and you don't see the whole thing. So You know,
Yes.
it's all what you see in the circles you travel in, right?
But we had Ted Brown from Texas on the first one, and he was very much like you, Phil.
I don't mean to be unfair, but maybe some of the other folks, maybe on like more of the Republican type folks. But regardless, and we had a ice out rally here in Springfield, the city over from Eugene, and 3 individuals, pro-ice individuals, showed up wearing automatic weapons, AK-47s. So, but I mean, how is that? That's clearly an attempt to intimidate. On behalf of this force that's intimidating, quite frankly. Again, but the conversation, we just talk past each other because they're having a conversation where it's all about violent criminals, but that's not what is happening. It's not the reality on the streets.
Right. Michael, I think you want to.
I mean, I think, like I said, when we were talking about Julian Assange last cycle, I think that we are not, when I say we, I guess I'm talking about people in my communities when I grew up. We're not that shocked when we see this because we saw it before. And I would say this, there was a time when these kind of things were happening in our communities, and we would tell other people. They just said, "Oh, well," because this is what I was told. As long as you're not breaking the law, you don't have to worry about the police. But I knew for a fact that wasn't true for me. So when we see what's happening with the ICE and all this, it's like, and we're talking about Republicans and Democrats, and it's like a continuation of the same thing over and over and over. So when last year I was talking to a coworker of mine, and she said, "Well, ICE is just gonna go in and get the violent criminals," and she actually believed that. And I said, "Do you actually believe that?" And she said, "Yes." But I knew better. So when we see this, how they have twisted the words and demonized immigrants from certain places, because we're still getting immigrants in from Europe and other places like that. We're still getting them, and making it a crime for people who have not become naturalized citizens, who have been trying for years. They're not bothering anybody. They're going to work. Their children are going to school. They're following the law, and to make those people criminals and put them in the same category as gang members and drug dealers is just inhumane. So I mean, I know we talk about left versus right, conservative versus liberal, all that, but that's just inhumane. And so I think that if we can come together and see the humanity and not making left, right, conservative, I mean all that kind of those labels, the rah 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 side versus the blah 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 side, and come together in that regard and lose, I think that we can come together if we do that and rise above some of these labels. Over.
Absolutely. Okay, well, I know how all of us political people could talk for hours, but I'm going to stick to my guns and keep these at an hour. But so I just want to thank you all for coming, and anybody that would like to come back again another time. I'm going to keep going, and I've got a few more candidates in the queue, and I do want to get more libertarians. So we will keep trying that. And Phil, please send any our way if you.
Yes, ma'am.
No, and I'm working on something too. I'll talk to you about it later. But so, okay, we're going to go out with something hopeful here. This is from it's the Arizona State University's Center for Independent something or other. Anyway, they're the ones that did the study about the split ticket voting and really showed how much independent and particularly young people are bucking the system and not going for the uniparty. So we're going to end on that note. And okay, so this is, 3 minutes. So thank you.
Was just how much independent voters affected the outcome of the election. According to ASU's Center for an Independent and Sustainable Democracy, split ticket voting from independents in battleground states helped put Donald Trump back in the White House. This is based on analysis of exit poll data. So we're joined by co-director Tom Riley here to talk about the results and what this means moving forward as the number of independent voters continues to go up. First of all, you were just saying that a lot of young people are going independent these days, huh?
Yeah, I mean, polling's showing upwards of 50% of
50%,
Gen Z voters have rejected joining the parties. So, parties that, don't address this large group of voters, risk alienating a large portion of the electorate.
Okay. Seems easier to go independent, right? If you're hung up on something that either party's doing?
Well, I think that, with the increased polarization, what we're seeing is that nationwide people are self-identifying as independents.
Okay.
So that voting bloc has continued to increase.
So we know Republicans vote Republican, Democrats vote Democrat largely. How did independents play a role in all of this?
Well, so overall, nationally, they broke for Harris, about 49 to 46%.
Okay.
But it was a different story in the swing states. In the swing states, they primarily broke for Trump. But the big story here is that, as you said, Republicans vote straight ticket Republicans, Democrats straight ticket Democrats. It were the independents that were twice as likely to split their tickets. And I think that's what we saw in the swing states. So in 5 of the swing states that had Senate races, 4 of them, the Democratic candidate won. One, the Republican candidate won. So we saw this. Most people couldn't understand how Trump could win the 7 swing states, but the Democratic senator win the Senate race.
Mm-hmm.
It's independents.
Wow, that is interesting. So what are we looking at moving forward to the next time, you think?
Well, so according to the exit polling with Reuters and Edison, there's about 23,000 we analyzed. About 34% of the elected self-identified as independents, just right behind Republicans. And as I said, this growing block of young people that self-identify as independents. I don't run campaigns, but, trying to reach across the aisle and getting Republicans to vote Democrat and Democrat Republicans doesn't pan out.
Okay.
I think they need to focus on this group of independents that's growing. They're unpredictable. They change their vote from election to election, and they're the group that they need to concentrate on.
How do you think, just a few seconds left here, polling turned out, the polling during the race? Because it seemed like in the end, Harris was a few points above Trump.
Yeah, the problem with polling is that the margin of error is sometimes 3 to 5%.
Yeah, right.
So, within that, they fall within the margin of error, but it doesn't mean a lot in really close races.
Yeah. Okay. Tom, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Very interesting. Yeah. All right. April?
I just got to say, it's funny how the news guy was like, those silly young people just get hung up about something that the parties are doing. Oh, like genocide maybe, or they can't rent a house or whatever. Anyway, okay. Thank you guys.